Welcome back to Guff Stuff Weekly Podcast. I'm Guff.
I'm Javan.
So, I think it was the last podcast we had. We had a guest and we were talking about, was it environment?
World building and immersion. I believe.
So I want to build on that a little bit, and I want to just start talking about some of the playing aids playing peripherals or playing accessories, depending on how you want to use that word.
Enhancements.
Playing enhancements. There you go.
There we go.
That we use for our tabletop games or video games or just whatever.
So can you give me an example of like something?
Yeah. So like if you're playing a tabletop RPG, you might use a dice tower to roll your dice.
Oh, okay.
And it's good. The reason I bring that up is because it's kind of one of those things that most people don't think about. And, you always have that one friend that rolls his dice, that picks, I rolled a 20.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what? What? You rolled a what? I didn't even see the dice hit the table. Oh, yeah, no, it was 20. It's just one of those things that just keeps everybody honest, even if they're already honest. And it's also kind of fun. So
you're an advocate for like all of your players using them then?
No, I think it's just a nice accessory
Okay.
at the table if everybody wants to. But like we have had in the past, players that were maybe fudging their dice rolls a little bit, which not really a huge deal in when you're a tabletop RPG necessarily, especially if your DM is paying attention, because you can just kind of RPG your way through that. But it does, if you have a bunch of people that haven't played together and you have one guy or two people kind of fudging their rolls, it kind of sucks. It sets a bad morale. So it's nice just to say, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to use dice rollers for a while. That makes sense. That's just an example, obviously. I use dice roll. I use the dice tower just because I like to.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the vein of when we played tabletop war games,
Right.
like Warhammer or any sort of game like that.
Right.
We always have a tray
Dice
at the
tray,
table
yep.
because you're rolling so many dice and you guys are agreeing to play to a game for 4 hours, and it's a gentleman's agreement that you just roll in the tray.
Right.
And like anybody I've ever played against that doesn't want to roll in that tray that's in the center of the table has almost always turned out to be a cheater in some way or another.
Yeah, and it's
Like, because if you're not okay with rolling your dice into a tray in the middle of the table, something's fishy.
yeah.
Something is fishy. Like
Yeah.
I don't. If you're rolling behind a building, I don't care. And at the end of the day, too, it's also you can make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes even when I roll in a tray, and my opponent will be like, "That's a 5, yo," and I'll be like, "Oh, okay."
Right.
Like you don't even realize it.
Right.
And it's just like getting two eyes on something is always better than having one person just say,
Yeah.
"Nope, this is what happened."
Well, I think you also, when you use that kind of aid, that kind of accessory, that you also get this. You're already starting to agree on something, even if it's just a neutral thing you're agreeing on. We're going to roll in a dice tray. We're going to roll on a dice tower. You're already meeting on a nice neutral ground. So I think you're already setting a relationship off of that particular player group in a good way.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
So that was just one of the examples. Obviously, there's a lot of things that I've used in the past. Some I've liked, some I didn't like, but I've always kind of liked the dice towers or dice trays. Dice trays are fine too.
I am a huge advocate for dice trays. I'm not so much for the tower personally. That's just me. It's a personal preference.
No, it is definitely a preference.
But like when we play in our 40K tabletop RPG or any RPG I ever play in,
nice to have a tray.
I have a little tiny tray with it's the lid of the box of the dice box.
Yep.
And all my DMs and everybody at the table knows that if it's not rolled in the box, it don't count.
Right.
And so like I've rolled critical successes on really important rolls, but the dice flew out of the thing.
Right.
I'll re-roll it.
Yep.
Like
it
wasn't in the box,
right. Yep.
And it's nice too because now I can dirtle and like roll dice off to the side if I want, or fidget with my dice, or I leave dice sitting or whatever.
Right.
And it's like you don't ever have to worry about that I'm just saving dice rolls or something like that. It's just like
I'm gonna roll this dice. Oh, and then the next round I got a 20.
Yeah,
Wait, is it your turn yet?
Oh, I pre-rolled.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It's like there's a time for pre-rolling, but also at the same time, if you're just thinking about lots of things.
Yep.
One I want to bring up
Yep.
that I find extraordinarily useful is initiative trackers. And I like initiative trackers in conjunction with a DM screen.
Oh, yeah.
So what I like to do is I've started using, we have these little mini like chalkboards.
Yep.
And you just take a chalk, you write numbers 1 through 6 on it, or you write the player's name on it or their initials, whatever you want to do. Or if there's a damage modifier, +4 damage for the team.
Right.
You write it on this little chalkboard. And then it's kind of an angled, so it's like a peak or an angle. It has a triangle basically. Yep. But the bottom's open.
Well, it's like a little like artist easel.
Yeah, it's kind of like an easel. Yep. And then basically you just hang it on the DM screen.
Yep.
And you hang it so everybody can see it, and the DM screen is like the one thing everybody at the table can see, the outside of it at least. Yep. And as a DM, you can write little notes like what each one is for and all this and that on your side.
Right.
It's so nice because it gives a visual aid to all the players of like what's going on. People won't be like, whose turn is it? You can literally be like, point to the thing and be like, it's this. This is the thing we're on.
Right. You just look at the initiative tracker, you can see.
Yeah, and then you can turn it over, like done, like whatever. And all you have to do then as a player is just remember what number you are.
Yep. It's pretty handy.
Or you can write names on it, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge advocate for that.
Yeah, we have a dice tracker bag laying around here somewhere that has little bean bags, 1 through 8.
The Beetle and Grimm's one, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Then I've also in Pathfinder they had a magnetic one where they had all the encounters. They had like 4 or 5 tokens for encounters, and then they had 1, 2, 3, blah blah blah. You can write your player names on them, dry erase, and then you just magnetize them on the back of a DM screen again, and
you
just sit there, and people knew exactly where their turn was.
The other one I remember, the fellow on the last podcast, Fluffy, always used the Cyberpunk Red phone app. Because he could roll all the characters for random events or whatever in that, and then there was an initiative tracker in that too, and it's like that's pretty nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where we're shooting at here, is going over cool things like that.
Yeah. I got another one. Unless you want to talk more about initiative trackers.
No, yeah, we'll cover as many as we can. And
okay. Another one. I'm kind of in the vein of this initiative tracker. As a DM, most of the stuff I use is DM tools.
Right.
As a player, I don't use a lot of tools because I like to. I'm very theater of the mind as a player.
Yep.
And so I like to engage without much extra going on. Just it helps me personally.
No, of course.
Because I get distracted really easily.
Ooh, shiny.
Yeah, ooh, shiny. But anything that makes the busy work of managing combat for a DM easier, especially in like Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. Managing monster HP pools is kind of tricky.
Yeah, it is. It's a pain in the butt.
And the best thing I've found for me is like a stenographer's pad or a notepad that I can just peel off the notes at the end.
Yep.
Legal pads are another one I've seen a lot of people use.
Yeah, I like just using like even this like little 4x5 notepad and just writing down monsters, all their hit points, and then the players too, just kind of keep an idea what's going on with players, and then just kind of keep basic math going. It's I mean, basic math is not hard if you know basic math from the beginning. So
I like
it's the type of math I like.
In fact, what I end up doing a lot of times with the steno pads too is I'll like write notes from the combat on them, and then I'll transfer them to another spot later. But it's a very quick, easy, efficient way of just managing a combat where you don't need a computer. You don't need, because like you and I have been playing long enough now that computers, they're becoming more and more integrated with tabletop RPGs. But like when we started, you had a book.
I still struggle with having a computer in front of me, even knowing it's such a handy deal. It just, for me, I'd just rather have a paper screen in front of me, the DM screen, a cardboard, whatever. I don't know. I'm trying really hard to embrace technology. It's just I struggle. Like I know for me it's clunky, and it's always been clunky because I didn't need it before. We literally, when I started playing, it was index cards, 4x6 index cards. All my characters were on 4x6 index cards. Mm-hmm. Super basic, super simple, nothing complicated. And that's all I needed. I could just show up to game session with 4x6 index cards and dice. I was good to go.
Yep. I don't know how many characters I've made in my entire career of tabletop RPGs that have just been on notebook paper.
Yeah.
Like, because you just write down the important stuff you need to know.
Heck, it wasn't even up. Even my first few 5th edition characters, I wrote on notebook paper. I only switched over to the character sheet because I wanted everybody in the room to do the same thing. So because if you don't have uniformity, then you have, again, one player maybe not following the rules or misunderstanding how the rules work. And when you're running a store and you're having games, people are paying to be here, whatever to do, you just have to have that uniformity. And so that's kind of why I've even started using character sheets, because it just, I don't know, if I'm not using them, how can I talk somebody else into using them? So
that's fair.
I'm not charging people for them. I just print them out and give it to them. So, and
it's weird because I don't normally think of like character sheets as a peripheral or like an accessory, but they kind of are.
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, the first time I got character sheets back in second ed or advanced, my mom had bought me this character sheets. These really nice. They were yellow and they were just. I'm guessing the character sheet thing itself cost $20.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure when I got rid of the stuff, my D&D stuff at the time, I'm pretty sure I had all 20 character sheets still in there.
Wow.
It was just so nice, I didn't want to use them.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I going to do with these character sheets? Plus, you're erasing and then rewriting, and it's like,
I think that was pretty common because I actually have a copy of like a role-playing or a player tracker, player campaign tracker or whatever, and there's nothing written in it.
Right, yeah, it's just like nobody touched it.
It's pristine, and it's like, I bet you a lot of people just photocopied it.
Yeah, it was just way simpler because you didn't want to use the premium quality material stuff. And it was expensive.
Yeah.
It was just easier to write on a 4x6 index card. A couple of those if you wanted to.
Yeah, take the format of whatever they did and apply it to your method.
But, with new technologies comes along things. And one of the things I really tried to embrace in the store, and even in my own games when I do them, is there's, if we're done talking about the...
Carry on?
Yeah. Not trying to push the schedule here, but we're talking about technology. I like what I really do like about the technology and having a laptop is there was this program called Sirenscape, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Sirenscape.
Yep.
And it gave you that ambient noise. So if you weren't a lot of the DMs that come here have a music playlist they put and they sit there, so it's on the background. That's kind of what we did when we were young too, except for it was records and tapes, and then slowly moved to DVDs, or CDs. Then DVDs, and then whatever. But it's nice. It's just nice to have that ambient, that noise, and like in the table we have here, we got lighting, and we can adjust the lighting to go to whatever mood we want. And then in Sirenscape, you can turn on the noise, and you can turn on the city streets, or you can turn on the dungeon noises, and it sets that kind of mood. And if you got players who are like legitimately getting into your story, it really can help set the tempo and the pace, and it makes them feel like, oh man, we got to keep going. There is crap in this dungeon that's freaking us out. Especially if you have like the lights turned down a little bit, like we only had the overhead table lights when we were over in the other corner, and turn off all the rest of the lights in the building and just set the mood, And it's fun when you have players that are willing to go that route. Obviously, not always. These are DM tools, obviously. I did, and I will probably end up using all that stuff again at some point. But
yeah, I definitely, I have always used music to frame like narrative scenes in the role playing games.
Yep.
Like a lot of times I'll like have a piece of music in mind when I describe a scene to my players.
Right. Yeah.
And so like I use that. I've always used that. And then the other thing too is like for a lot of my sessions, my players know when the music starts, the session's starting. So like wrap up your yakking. We're getting going.
I've noticed the music also takes away that little extra over talk that happens.
Yeah.
I'll sit back with one of the guys who used to, Gamer Joe, who he used to play under. He'd have a music for his boss, and I noticed at the time, it was sometimes you just sit there and listen to the music. I found myself paying more attention to what's going on but not paying attention to the players so much as what was actually going on to what he was saying, because the music was kind of like, okay, this is what he wants.
Yeah, it's framing of the scene.
Yep.
For sure. And like I think that is kind of like the sweet spot for me, is if a role-playing tool or a tool for a DM or a tabletop RPG or a player
Right.
adds to the experience but doesn't distract, because a lot of times, and it's not the right thing for everybody either.
Right.
Each person's going to have varying levels of attention deficit disorder.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, and at the end of the day, it's you got to play enough to know kind of what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. What works for your group? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Some groups are really good with, any playing aids, and some are absolutely terrible because it's just another object for them to play with at the table.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know for like laptop, I usually keep a laptop nearby for reference.
yeah.
So, because I usually have PDFs of all the books, and it's easy to just Control F and search. Or if we're playing D&D, I had D&D Beyond, so if I needed to find a rule, you could very quickly do it through the search functions.
There's another advantage to some of the periphery, some of the aids that we're using is D&D Beyond. That's a perfect.
Yeah, that is definitely a role playing aid.
Absolute perfect role playing aid.
Yep.
It helps you with like keeping track of spells. You can just go through and set them up there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to write them down. You don't have to. Like, I used to write all my character spells out.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know what they did. Or I memorized the page in the player's handbook, and then I had to have my own player's handbook at that point.
Yep.
And, not everybody's going to buy the player's handbook. So it's nice just to be able to say, okay, everybody, D&D Beyond, go to it.
I love the idea of D&D Beyond. It has its faults.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the idea of it is a perfect idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's a digital repository for all the information of 5th edition.
Right, the stuff you need.
And that's what we need. Like, that was good. Do more of that. But, if I buy a player's handbook, give me a code that,
Yeah, it gives me at least a discount.
Yeah,
man.
it's a little ridiculous. But that's the major corporation thing, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that particular company does not do that. A lot of other ones actually do.
Oh, yeah.
I think Modifius and Piazzo. And there's a couple others.
Goodman Games. Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yep.
If you buy a PDF, if you buy the physical copy, you get a code for the PDF.
And that's handy as heck.
And it's like, do more of that. Please, Wizards, take a.
I think they were afraid that people were going to stop buying the physical copies of books and just go with PDFs. No, they're not.
But like Goodman,
the players that are going to buy them will just still buy them.
Goodman Games proved it that
right.
Putting the code in the physical copy is the way to go, because now you don't have to worry about only being online.
Right.
But if you do buy a book, you can take it online.
Right.
I feel like I'm getting a little off topic, but
no, that's it. Well, still, if you think about it, though, that's part of even having your books at the table. Let's just use players' handbooks. That technically is just an aid to the game. And the reason I say having both is part of this whole topic is because, and the reason you want to have both the PDF and the book is if I'm sitting at home and I'm making or brainstorming a character idea. Chances are, if I have a player's handbook, that is sitting on my lap or sitting next to me wherever I'm at, and I'm using that physically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not probably sitting at my computer, keyboarding in and trying to. But if I'm at a table with a bunch of people, it's so easy to just get on my phone and look at my PDF or my laptop or whatever. Usually it's my phone for me.
Yep.
And then just boom, and it's right there. I don't want to have. If everybody at the table has 3 or 4 books, it's going to be pretty cumbersome.
Conserving space.
Right, and I noticed over the years that even back when we had to get PDFs in a less than legitimate way, the DM would always have all the books, and so we would bring our own players' handbooks too. But if we had, say, a 2nd edition handbook, say the Thieves Handbook or the Ranger's Handbook or whatever, and we have 2 Rangers. Well, you don't really want to fight over them, so it's nice just to have that PDF to print out a couple pages. So we, I don't know, them are aids that I like to use too. Let's hear. So, one of the things we haven't really talked about, we've went through some technology now, and it definitely, again, it all goes back to your group, right? Does your group want it or does you not? And there's groups in here that love some of this stuff and don't use any of it. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that is probably the biggest expense, other than books, would be minis.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me. I'll let you start with the miniature.
Yep, I think that there's 2 mindsets for this. There's the people who, well, okay, so I'll use an example. Okay, I suppose I'll set this up a little bit. So one day I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of talking to my wife about something, and I'm like, well, imagine blah blah blah, and I was just like, it was something silly, probably like, imagine a dinosaur coming along and eating a boat, and just some silly story I was telling her, because that's what I do. That's why she rolls her eyes at me all the time. And she sat there and she looked at me and she goes, I can't actually do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I can't visualize like that. I can't take a picture and put it in my head and visualize a scene with it. And I thought, oh, well, what the heck? Who can't do that? That's silly. Like, it's just so normal for me. If I close my eyes, I see all kinds of weird crap. Mm-hmm. But I guess there's a percentage of population that can't actually visualize. And so that gets me to the minis. There's that percentage, like when we played with her, I didn't realize that because she has played with me before. She loves having a mini at the table because then she can see her player. She doesn't have to try and imagine what her player looks like. She can just look. It's right there. That's my player.
Right.
Where I was like, my player can be the soda can. I don't care. I'll pretend it's a barbarian. I mean, that's in my brain. It works that way. But I don't mind playing with minis. I don't mind playing without. It's theater of mind versus the physical. And I know that there's a few companies like Critical Role and some of the other big online ones. There's some of them that don't use anything. They don't use any terrain. And Critical Role uses only in like major battles.
Yep.
He will go and pull out the big tower scene, where everybody's fighting and the dragon's sitting on top of the tower, and everybody's excited. And I'm kind of that way. I'd rather just do a scene by scene. Not every fight needs to be narrated with minis.
And that's I think that is, for me, it's always been the correct way to do it that way. If there's a major scene set piece fight, I will take the time and set it up so that my players know where everything is.
Yeah.
And I don't mind doing that because that's something I know I can plan for.
Right.
But for a random encounter or anything like that, it's not worth the time. I have found that it is not worth the time to set up a random encounter or just every encounter because it takes a while to set up.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to manage the pieces and all this and that. It takes a while. And so what I've always done is I've always just been generous to my players on the theater of the mind.
Right.
Because I understand not all players are good at theater of the mind, but it is a skill and it is something you can train. Even if you're not good at it to begin with, you can get better at it.
Right.
Granted, there's a certain percentage of the population that might not actually be able to do that.
Right.
But I can't cast a net for everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
And if that player needs a visual aid, I will do it as necessary.
I mean, I would even say that most people that need that visual aid, or even people that just like my daughter, she doesn't even use. We only use minis once in a while, but every time we start a new game, she buys a new set of dice just for that group, that player, that character, and then she makes a mini and paints it, whether she uses it or not.
Yeah,
it's just so she has like a little memento of her campaign.
And that's totally cool. I think that's an awesome idea too. It's stuff like Hero Forge or like where you're making your own minis.
Right.
Always been a big fan of that. You and I have a different mindset because we come from an edition and we started role playing where characters weren't worth a lot.
No. That's why we use index cards, because they were cheap.
Yeah, and then you find the index card that they live, right?
Yeah.
Or like I never really invested in a character till after like 6th level.
Yeah, right. Because it was just why.
But and at the end of the day, as far as like a role-playing accessory, if that helps you get into the character,
Right.
by all means, go nuts. Like if that helps you engage with what's going on,
Right.
and it gives you something to do when you're not playing too.
Yeah.
Like there's so many of these things
Right.
that are just important to like give you something to do more or less.
Yeah. Well, I feel that if you can keep it, my biggest issue has been for the last, say, decade or so is the dang cell phone.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea that we have them. It's just so easy to get sidetracked on a little game or a little, messaging your buddy about fishing or, I mean, anything that you could be doing other than playing in the game. I've had games where I've just said, I can't have a phone at the table just because it's way too distracting for certain people.
Yep.
But
I feel like as a player, you should know whether or not it's distracting. If it gets to your turn and you're like, what happened? And you're in the middle of a big combat, like you can leave.
Yeah, just go on.
Like you can leave.
Yeah.
Someone else will pilot your character for you.
Yeah, we can roll. We can roll for you. It's
we
fine.
can roll for you.
Yeah.
You are an NPC because that's all. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
No, anyway,
this is a hot button topic for us.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no. Anybody who's been a player and a DM knows that this is a topic. I guess the last one I want to go over is something pretty rare, and it's not, you don't see it very often. At least, well, I've only seen it a few times, and I only have one or two players that are willing to delve into this particular part of the accessories and aids. Is the player who shows up as their character.
I have done this as a DM. I took a page out of Chris Perkins' book because sometimes like his characters will dress up, for Acquisitions Incorporated and stuff.
Yep.
But whenever he shows up as like a Sararak or as like an evil wizard, it's like everyone just loses their shit.
Right.
And so like I have like a long black robe and I have, like some crazy hat or mask and I'll show up to a really important session where I'm the big bad evil guy at the end of a campaign.
And it's like, okay, we know shit's going down tonight.
And it's like it increases engagement.
Right.
And it's a talking point too.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
creates memories.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, isn't that really what it's all about? Mm-hmm. You get down, you whether we're going back from our last podcast is how to get people into your environment, how to keep them there, and then this one we're talking about visual aids and how we can use those to make the game better, make it worse, make it whatever. But all in all, it's really just about making those memories and
and engagement, like good engagement, just breeds memorable moments.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like it just absolutely creates memorable moments.
Anyway, so yeah, that's what I had for this particular subject.
So let's take it to the next step then.
Okay.
Let's morph it.
Okay, what's the next step?
Over. Or should we save it for another podcast?
What's the next step?
Peripherals and video games.
Oh yeah.
And tabletop and war games. What do you think?
I don't know how long is this one.
We'll cover it in the next one.
Sounds good.
All right. Catch you guys
Till
later.
next time.